Okay, I would like to call to order this meeting of the Harwich Planning Board for the town of Harwich, Massachusetts. Requests for accommodations for any persons having a disability can be made by contacting the administration office at 508-430-7514. If there's anybody here tonight who has an issue and would like an accommodation, we will make a reasonable attempt to make that accommodation today. Hearing nobody, then I would also like to notify everybody that the town is recording this meeting both in audio and video, and that any person who is attending to also record the meeting in audio or video, if they could please inform the board. Okay, hearing none, I would like to begin the meeting with public hearings. And the first public hearing, which I would like to open, is for PB 2017-32, Joshua A. and Jason D. And I'm not even going to try to pronounce this, so I'll spell it. Michniewiczz.
McNevich.
Thank you very much. You
Very
do much
welcome.
better than I do, Charlene. Prospective owners under agreement with care of David G. McNevich, P.E. representative. The applicant seeks approval of a site plan review special permit pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-55. The proposal seeks to construct a 6,000 square foot, 6-bay commercial structure and certain appurtenant site amenities for construction industrial use. The property is located at 45 Main Street Extension, map 45, parcel H2-1 in the IL zoning districts. Now, before we proceed, it is my understanding that the applicants have requested a continuance. Is that true, Charlene?
Yes, they have. We did receive a letter from Sarah Cole of Coastal Engineering on behalf of, and this is dated January 22nd. Dear Planning Board members, on behalf of our clients, Joshua A. and Jason D. McNevich, I would like to request a continuance of a hearing that is scheduled for January 23rd, 2018. Therefore, we respectfully request that you reschedule the above reference project for February 13th, 2018 public hearing.
Okay, is there any discussion on the board with regard to this request? Is there any discussion? Is there any discussion from those members of the public that are here with regard to this request? Hearing none, I would like to call for a motion to continue this hearing to February 13th. Is that correct, Shirley?
Yes.
February 13th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
You need to do a roll call vote because
Oh,
you have
okay.
David on the phone.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Okay, Mary?
Aye.
Al? I will vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Aye.
And David?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. The hearing then is continued to February 13th, 2018 at a time not prior to 6:30 p.m. The next item on the agenda for public hearings is I would like to open up the hearing for PB 2017-33, Stephen D. and Nancy Morris, owners, care of Dan Speakman, representative. The application seeks application with waivers seeks approval of a use special permit for a detached accessory apartment pursuant to the Code of the Town of Harwich, Section 325-51.h and Article 5 Use Regulations. The proposal seeks to construct a 725 square foot, one-bedroom dwelling unit with a single bay garage. The property is located at 11 Oliver Snow Road, map 24, parcel B3-A in the R-R zoning district. Now, my understanding with this applicant is that they have also requested a continuance. Is that true, Shirley?
Yes, we received a letter from them today, from Dan Speakman. This letter's to request to postpone the hearing for David D. and Nancy Morris from January 23rd to your next meeting on February 13th. And they said, it's my understanding you will not have a quorum at the meeting tonight. There was a question whether we were going to have enough to actually act on a special permit. So erring on the side of caution, they requested a continuance.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion from members of the board on this request for continuance? I guess,
Just, have we got anything else on the 13th?
Yes, you
Currently,
do.
What else?
You've got another zoning amendment public hearing, and you have Outer Cape Health. I know they're eager to get this done. I would not suggest you continue it to any other date but the 13th. It's going to be, it'll be a full
That'll give us
meeting.
3 public hearings that night?
It'll actually give you 4. You've done it before. I know you can do it.
I don't mind doing it, that isn't the question.
Yeah.
Okay, is there any other comments or questions from members of the board? Any comments or questions on this request for continuance from any members of the public here this evening? Okay, hearing none, I would like to request a motion to continue this public hearing to February 13th, 2018, at a time not before 6:30 PM.
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I will then request a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. This public hearing will be continued to February 13th, 2018, at a time not prior to 6:30 PM.
If I could, I would ask that you please hold on to your plans for both of those applications,
Yes.
because we only get a limited number of copies, so please don't toss them out, because you will need them on the 13th.
Okay, thank you very much, Shirley. Okay, the next item under public hearings is zoning bylaw amendments. And there are 2 zoning bylaw amendments that are going for public hearing tonight, both dealing with the issue of recreational marijuana. The first one, I will read the public hearing, the public notice on that. Article 20 zoning bylaw.
Actually, it's Article XX, just
Oh, okay.
number to be named later.
Okay. Article, thank you for that.
I wouldn't have known that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either, so,
It's just the way they've always done it. I usually go article blank, and
okay. Well, thank you for the correction,
you're
Shirley.
very welcome.
Article XX, zoning bylaw article, temporary moratorium on sale and distribution of recreational marijuana. To see if the town will vote to amend the town's zoning bylaw, article, and now is this XX,
Yes, that's
XXII?
22.
22, okay. Thank you. Temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana as follows. Section 325-134, purpose. Paragraph A. Add in the second sentence within the parentheses after Acts of 2016 the following. And thereafter on July 28th, 2017 by Chapter 55 of the Acts of 2017. Paragraph B, within the first sentence, replace the phrase, "a permitted use in the town," with specifically addressed in the zoning bylaw, and delete in its entirety the last sentence. Section 325-135, definitions. Add a new definition for marijuana establishment as follows. A marijuana cultivator, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana retailer, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business. Change marijuana testing facility to independent testing laboratory, and keep the existing definition language. Section 325-136, temporary moratorium. In the second sentence,
Read it as printed.
change June 30th, 2018.
No, it should be, the notice is written as July 30th.
Okay, it's July,
2018.
okay. July 30th, 2018 to December 31st, 2018. The third sentence deleted by ballot measure. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over what each of these changes is proposed to accomplish.
And what I've done for everybody, and also for the viewers at home, is I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation to show where the changes are in the specific sections as noted in the legal notice. There is one typo, and I will address that when we get to that one, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Shirley. In section 325-134, the change is solely to reflect the current status of state legislation with regard to recreational marijuana.
Yes.
The change in section B, specifically addressed in the zoning bylaw, is just a change to make reference to the zoning bylaw and not confuse it to, with the list of permitted uses. In definitions, we are basically adding a new definition, which is the marijuana establishment, which is a broader definition, which will be more inclusive of all various types of licensed marijuana-related businesses.
Actually, marijuana establishment definition already exists. We're just putting in a new definition for that.
Okay, thank you very
Just
much.
to clarify.
Excuse me.
The next, we're just making a change in the title of one definition from testing facility to independent testing laboratory.
Yes.
And in section 325-136, which is really the heart of what we're trying to accomplish with this amendment, and that is to extend the current moratorium to December 31st of this year, 2018, which is,
21st, right?
No, it's actually, there was a typo
There
in
was a
that
typo.
language,
Oh.
but that wasn't part of the legal notice. But where there is an error is that in the legal notice, it said that July 30th, 2018. It should have been June 30th, 2018. So I do have a proposed motion to fix that one typo. The typo of December 21st was actually in the text that I added so people could look at, and that's got nothing to do with the actual article.
so the effect is to extend the existing moratorium to December 31st of this year. Okay, do I have any discussion from members of the board? Hearing Joe.
A couple of things. At some point, we're going to hear from the chief.
Yes, we're certainly going to open it up to, and we would love to hear from the chief.
I just would like to relate to the board the reason why we do these kinds of things. I happened to run into the detective sergeant in charge of enforcing these kinds of laws this week, and he tells me a story which I think you would be interested in. We apparently have a business in this town currently in force and effect that sells paraphernalia, okay? Obviously, they can't sell marijuana, but they sell paraphernalia. And part of what they do in the course of their sales, and Chief, you may have talked about this, or we're going to talk about it, but part of there's a business next door. And these folks are sitting in there smoking marijuana, which they can do, and the poor person who owns the business next door, her customers can't breathe because of the smoke and so forth and so on. So if there was ever any question, and there never was, on my mind that I wanted to do this, that story just reaffirmed it for me, for whatever it's worth to you all.
And if I might, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
we're
go ahead,
actually
Sharon.
There's actually going to be 3 zoning articles being proposed. You'll have a public hearing on an additional one on the 13th that you guys reviewed at the last meeting. And it's kind of belt and suspenders. As some of you may know, the town of Brewster put a proposal forward to do an outright ban, and it failed at town meeting. And now they have nothing in place to control the use. So we're doing a belt and suspenders here. One would be, which is before you this evening, is an outright ban. And this would also require general bylaw. So it would go hand in hand with the general bylaw. If this doesn't pass at the town meeting, and it's important to note that this is not a ban on recreational marijuana that you are allowed to smoke in your own home or grow your plants. It's got nothing to do with that. This is strictly for the sale of recreational marijuana. You can grow your own now, and that's fine, but we don't have a facility to sell it except for medical marijuana, which is totally different. So this is the actual sale. Then if this does not pass, then, or actually the next one is the outright ban. This is the extension of the moratorium. If the ban doesn't pass and it goes to the moratorium, this would extend out for an additional 6 months so that we can try and regroup and figure out what we need to do. And then the third bylaw would be, if both of these fail on town meeting floor, would be a time, place, and manner bylaw that we discussed at the last meeting that you'll be holding a public hearing on. So it would allow uses by special permit with restrictions and conditions and all that in certain areas, but we'll talk about that more on the 13th of February.
Okay. Charlene, I do have one question that you may or may not know. There has been some discussion about holding a special town meeting with regard to these zoning ordinances.
My understanding is that last night's Board of Selectmen's meeting, the Board of Selectmen wanted more information before they were going to make that decision.
Okay, because one of the issues with the sort of three-pronged approach that we're pursuing here in the town is that there is an issue with regard to how zoning amendments get approved. As you all know, they have to go to, first, the public hearing that we're holding tonight. The next step is going to town meeting. It has to pass town meeting by a 2/3 majority. Then it has to be approved by the Attorney General's office before it becomes effective. Assuming that we have town meeting the beginning of May, it quite often takes a period of up to 3 to 4 months for the Attorney General's office to review and approve.
Yes, they have 90 days from when we submit it to them.
From when we submit it, so then that becomes like 3 months. And there's some concern with regard to, whether or not there would be a gap period. Therefore, we wanted at least the extension, and if we can get the extension approved, and hopefully the Attorney General would act on that one very quickly because it's not a major change in policy, it's just a change in date, which is allowed under the state law. Then, depending on what happens with the ban, that may take a little bit longer for the Attorney General to deal with. And if that doesn't get approved by town meeting, then we have the time, place, and method zoning ordinance, which we are going to have a public hearing on in February, to basically regulate how recreational marijuana would be sold in the town of Harwich. So we're sort of looking at time calendars and sort of effects of what happens with each of these proposed amendments as to the best way to proceed. So I think the town very reasonably is taking this three-pronged approach to best protect the interests of the residents of the town of Harwich.
If the outright ban gets approved on the floor of town meeting, then the other two won't even go forward.
Right, yeah.
It would be
So,
definitely postponed.
so there will be a special ordering at town meeting
Yes.
as to how these are
Yes.
held. And, if the outright ban is approved, then, the other two really become moot.
Right. I believe it's going to be ban,
Extension?
time, place, manner, and then extension.
Okay. So whatever way, you know, it's finally decided on, that's the rationale as to why we're going with this sort of three-pronged approach towards the regulation of recreational marijuana. With that being said, are there any other comments from members of the board? Mary?
My only concern is on the ban. I think the ban might be important, even, the moratorium may be important even in the extension of the outright ban, because we've got to get past that Attorney General's period. So if the current ban only goes to June 30th, and if the current moratorium only goes to
Good
June
point. 30th,
and we have a ban in place,
Till
you
June,
will have a
yeah.
gap
Yeah.
unless the Attorney General passes that in less than a month.
That's a good point.
So I think you need I think you need the moratorium absolutely for whatever you do. It's the only way you stay in control. So, I think it may be important from the educational perspective for our town meeting voters to realize that that's the way we stay in control, is if we extend that moratorium. And then regardless of what you decide, whether you decide you want the ban or you decide you want to vote for the zoning regulation, at least if the moratorium's in place, you don't have that gap. I think we risk having a gap if we don't have the moratorium extended. So, just food for thought.
Good point.
I agree with you 100%, Mary, and I would like to, if it's the consensus of the board, ask Charlene if we could make the recommendation with regard to that to the
I'll-
Board of Selectmen.
Even if you guys didn't agree, I was still
Yeah,
going to.
because,
that point.
therefore, even if the ban passes, I think we need to put the extension of the moratorium to the town meeting. And of course, if the ban passes, then we can pull the time, place, and manner regulation.
So,
Jim, did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
I do. I have actually two questions. First of all, the temporary moratorium, how many temporary moratoriums can we have?
According to the state law, originally it allowed a moratorium through June 30th of this year.
Yep.
That law was changed to now allow towns to have moratoriums through the end of this calendar year, which is what we would be doing by this amendment.
So this is it, though? We
This
can't-
would be it, yeah. The state law with regard to recreational marijuana would not allow us to have a moratorium beyond the end of this calendar year. That's my understanding.
Okay.
and am I correct, and none of this goes into effect if in fact they vote the moratorium at town meeting?
If they vote the moratorium at town meeting, you mean if they vote the ban at town meeting?
Ban, yeah.
If they vote the ban at town meeting, then, as Mary just stated, we should have them vote at town meeting on the extension of the moratorium, because it may be very much easier for the Attorney General to approve an extension of a moratorium that's already in place.
Okay.
And therefore, we may get quicker action on that than to have the Attorney General approve the outright ban.
Okay.
So I think Mary's point of voting on both of those would be the correct way to go.
Okay, so the second part of my question was then in the third sentence under section 325-136, in the third sentence, delete by ballot measure. Why would we delete by ballot measure?
Because it doesn't need to be voted by ballot anymore. That also got changed.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments from members of the board? Okay, hearing none, I would like to
Did David?
oh, I'm sorry, David, do you have any questions or comments?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'd like to open it up to any members of the public that are here this evening. Chief, would you like to make some comments? Could you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Chief David Gilmet, Chief of Police, Town of Harwich. Do you want, I'm in full support of this as a package deal, obviously. So I can speak to both of them now, or I can wait until you have the outright ban one up there to give you the full opinion of public safety.
Whichever you would prefer is fine.
Okay, why don't I just do it now? The one following this, obviously, will be an outright ban on retail sales of marijuana. And I hope some of you on the board have seen me out and about speaking on this issue before. My opinion, and the opinion is not just mine, by the way, it's the public safety community as a whole. I know Chief Clark was up here with me. I think it was when we spoke before the Board of Selectmen on the issue. So we strongly oppose bringing in retail sales to the community of Harwich. And it's not simply because I'm a police officer and a police chief. There's a lot of clear and convincing evidence out there based on what other states have already done with legalization and retail sales that is very concerning if you read about it. Now, I can give you a website that I was perusing today that I think is probably one of the best I've seen with information on this issue. Now, obviously, it comes from the law enforcement community, but the report I was reading today was dated 2017, so it's a fairly recent report about the impacts of marijuana legalization coming out of Colorado, and it's put on this website. This report is on this website. It's the National Marijuana Initiative website, and the address is HIDTA, which is HIDTA, which stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area. So HIDTA, HIDTA, NMI.org. That will bring you to this website. There is a treasure trove of information on the impacts of marijuana. There's a ton of statistics. There's a lot of anecdotal information and stories coming out of the emergency rooms and the public safety community, which clearly supports being very careful with a topic like this in a community like Harwich. I can't really tell you how concerned I am if this was to come into our community, based on what I've been reading and hearing over the past several months on this. So, and as I've stated before, I did a little blurb with the town administrator on Channel 18, and I just lay out 3 very quick areas that I think are going to be negatively impacted by this if it does come to our community, okay? One, and the most concerning, is the youth of our community will be negatively impacted, simply because it's more available. Now, I thought Charlene did an excellent job of explaining that this does not mean the community of Harwich is banning recreational marijuana. That is legal across the state now. So you can grow it and consume it privately, but you can't sell it. And that's what we're talking about. I think we're going to have negative impacts based just simply on the legalization anyway, but we're just going to have to deal with that. But I think if you bring retail in on top of the initial legalization, it's going to compound the issue within a community like ours. And so it's going to negatively impact the youth of the community. That's clearly laid out in the evidence coming out of Colorado and other states. Okay, use is up, emergency room visits are up, you know, traffic fatalities are up. This is all available to review. I think it's going to negatively impact the community also as a whole. If you picture, you know, potentially Harwich being one, surrounded by a number of communities that don't have retail sales. If Harwich had retail sales, you're drawing in people from all over the region surrounding our community, bringing them in, and they're going to come in and purchase in our community. And what's that going to cause? That's going to cause, at the very least, traffic congestion. But my concern is obviously increased use in automobiles, potentially leading to further, you know, drug-related crashes, more drug-related incidents on the street, more public consumption, simply because it's available here immediately. Yeah. That would be my concern for the community. Those are just a few examples. You can see many more in the information that I've cited. And I think it would also impact public safety. You know, there's several examples listed, and I can actually give you a handful that we've already experienced here in Harwich. And this is just, you know, since legalization. it's not, has nothing to do with retail sales being in the town yet or not. We've had a violent shooting up on the park and ride, which was related to a marijuana deal. We've had a young individual, 15 years of age, consume a cannabis-laced beverage and basically overdose and be transported to the hospital. We had a structure fire related to a grow operation in a house within the community. We had a young man out in Harwich Port diverting legally purchased medical marijuana for purchase, illegal purchase, to all his friends and colleagues, along with other illegal drugs when a search warrant was conducted on the house. So those are just a few examples of what we've already experienced here in Harwich. And I ask you, if you just apply common sense, are these incidents going to increase or decrease if we approve retail marijuana? It's basically a no-brainer, right? So those are my concerns. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I just wanted to make sure you were aware that the public safety community is deeply concerned about this, and I think it would change the face of this community if we did anything other than ban it. So that's where I'm coming from.
So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I'm on the website that you
Yep.
referenced. In Colorado, June 2017, there are 491 retail marijuana stores in the state, compared to 392 Starbucks and 208 McDonald's.
Right. I mean, those reports are full of things like that. And some of the stories that involve families and young people and medical incidents. And there's a phrase I just heard the other day, which, you know, we're going to hear a lot more, unfortunately, even with legalization, is marijuana-induced psychosis. Yeah. And it actually affects young people, it seems, more than your more experienced users. So you could actually end up having severe psychological, mental issues related to the use of this drug. You know, those are just a few reasons. So I would urge you to review the information that's available to you, and you know, we in the public safety community wholeheartedly support the dual package of the outright ban and the moratorium to give us that cushion. I thought Mary explained it very well. It's, I think that was the intent of it going up there. And the time, place, and manner, I pray to God we never have to go there. So that's my take on it.
so,
Okay, Jim?
yeah, you know, Chief, I want you to know that I'm a retired former corporate head of Environment, Health, and Safety, a global manufacturing company. And I can tell you some of the experiences that I had to deal with in one of the states that we just discussed and several others. And, you know, a $1 million haul truck, bent, done, scrapped, right? Because of the operator.
Yep.
Overhead operating cranes, right? I can only imagine what it would be like if we had the people in our community, construction workers on all the road work we're having done, out of control, right? Yeah. And so, thank you for your message.
Okay, are there any other comments from the board or from the public to the chief? Thank you very much, Chief. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to make any comments on this proposed zoning amendment? Okay, hearing none, I would like to close the public hearing on, correct me if I'm wrong in the way I repeat this, but on Article XX, zoning bylaw article, temporary marijuana, temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing on this?
So moved.
Second? Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, Mary?
Aye.
Al? Aye. I vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, so we have now closed the public hearing. I would like to now call for a motion with regard to the correction of the typographical error in the proposed zoning article.
I make a motion that due to a typographical error, motion to amend the proposed zoning article by changing the July 30th, 2018 date to June 30th, 2018, under paragraph 325-136, temporary moratorium in the second sentence.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. I'd now like to call for a motion to to approve the proposed article.
Move to approve the proposed article as amended and recommend the article to the town meeting.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second?
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'd like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Aye.
Joe votes aye. Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries. We will recommend this article to the town meeting for approval. I would now like to go on to the second item on the agenda with regard to,
This is the outright ban.
yes, Article XX, marijuana establishments ban. And I would like to read the proposed article to you. Article XX, zoning bylaw article marijuana establishments. To see if the town will vote to amend the town's zoning bylaw, Article 5, use regulations, section 325-10, prohibited uses in all zoning districts, to include a new paragraph K that would provide as follows, and further to amend Article, is that Article 2, Shirley?
2.
Article 2, Section 325-2, wording, usage, and definitions to include marijuana establishments, all as follows. Section 325-10, prohibited uses in all zoning districts. Subparagraph K, consistent with General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3, Subsection A, Subsection 2, all types of non-medical marijuana establishments as defined in General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 1, including marijuana cultivators, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturers, marijuana retailers, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business shall be prohibited within the town of Harwich. Section 325-2, word usage and definitions. Marijuana establishments, marijuana cultivators, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturers, marijuana retailers, or any other types of licensed marijuana-related business as defined in General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 1.
Excuse me.
I have one question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Mary.
Under both Section 10K and Section 325-2, we have the phrase marijuana product manufacturers. Is it supposed to be manufacturers, U-R-E-R-S? I'm questioning the spelling of that. It looks like there's an E-R-S that's missing from it.
Yeah, manufacturers.
I got this from
This
council.
is Dave.
Agreed. Understood. I just wonder if we don't need a typo.
Oh, Dave's talking.
Go ahead, Dave.
David?
Go ahead.
I noticed that all of them are plural except for testing laboratory. Why is that singular?
Could be laboratories.
I honestly don't know. I kind of inherited this from the previous planner, and she got the language from town council, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is the language that town council has recommended. I think, David, it
But
could
it
go.
should be manufacturers.
Yeah, I think that change should be made, but I think with regard to laboratory or laboratories, it could be either one. because we're going to, this will prohibit any laboratory, within the town of Harwich.
Yep.
Any other, Mary?
If I remember correctly, I think that could have come out of our last meeting when we were talking about testing facilities. I seem to recall we had a discussion on independent laboratories versus specifically marijuana testing laboratories. So that may have come from there for David's edification. Second question for you.
Yeah,
Would it be
go ahead.
appropriate to propose an amendment to the,
Can I,
Yep.
can you give me just a second?
Mhm.
Well, Mary, we haven't got to motions yet.
no,
I think when we get to
I'm saying when
motion.
we get there.
Yeah, I think it would be, but let's, let's let Charlene catch up.
Because if we can get this changed in the actual warrant article, it's going to be way easier.
Yeah, so then I think, Charlene, if I'm correct, I think Mary is correct, that when we get to doing motions on this, we can do a motion to make the correction just like we did in the other one.
And that's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, okay, great.
The manufacturer.
Okay, so is there any other discussion from members of the board while Charlene's working on that?
I have none.
Okay, any discussion from members of the public? Chief, do you have any more things that you would want to add?
No, Mr. Chairman, the public safety community fully supports this article for the reasons I stated previously.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, well, then what I would like to do, if there's no other comments, I would like to close the public hearing. So I would like a motion to close the public hearing
Move to close the public hearing.
on Article XX zoning bylaw, Article marijuana establishments. And I think I have a motion on the floor already to close the public hearing. Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, we are now closing the public hearing.
I'm sorry, who made the motion and seconded?
Joe made the motion. Jim, did you?
Jim.
Jim seconded.
Okay.
Okay.
JM and JJ.
Okay, Charlene, are you caught up?
I believe so.
Okay, what I would like to do now that we've closed the public hearing is first call for a motion with regard to the amendment that was suggested when we were in public hearing. Charlene, do you have wording for that motion?
It's on the board.
Charlene, you're one step ahead of all, that's as usual.
Assuming I spelled manufacturers right.
You did.
I think that looks right to me, but.
Looks right to me as well.
Okay, so I would like to call for a motion with regard to the correction of the typographical error.
I move that,
Change
due to a typographical error, motion to amend the proposed zoning article by changing the word manufacturers to manufacturers to manufacturers.
Okay, do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I would like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. I would now like to call for a motion with regard to the approval of the proposed article.
Move to approve the proposed article as amended and recommend the article to the annual town meeting.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Do I have any discussion? Hearing none, I would like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe? Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, we have a unanimous vote on that motion to recommend the article to town meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you very much, Chief. We appreciate your attendance and your comments. Okay, I would like to now move on to the public meeting session. Under new business, I would like to request approval of the minutes of the meetings of December 12th, 2017, and January 9th, 2018.
Not the January meeting. If we can only vote, we don't have those completed, so.
Okay. Sorry, then, let's just, I would like to request a vote on the minutes of the meeting of December 12th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion with regard to that? Hearing no discussion, I would like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay, the minutes of December 12th, 2017 are approved. Old business, zoning bylaw discussion continued with regard to the Port Village District. I think this is on the agenda because at the last meeting when we discussed the proposed zoning ordinance, I got a sense that there may not be the agreement on the board that there had been when we originally started discussing it, especially since the fact that we actually, I think, have 2 new members of the board. And I would like to just open up the discussion, and this is just an open discussion. We're not going to take any votes tonight. But as to whether or not members of the board feel that we should still pursue converting the current voluntary village overlay district to a permanent sort of underlying zoning for the Harwich Port area. Now, it doesn't mean that we have to do it exactly with the terms. We can take a look at them and vary them if we want. But I would like to just get a sense before we proceed any further as to whether or not the board is still interested in taking this type of action. So does any members of the board have any comments on this? Mary?
I just think it's important that we all understand what the difference means to us on a day-to-day basis. So as an overlay district, if my understanding of our opinion from Planning Board Town Council was correct, as an overlay district, we have much more flexibility in being able to grant waivers, dimensional waivers and other waivers along that district. It's not mandatory. People can still choose the overlay district, and if they do choose the overlay district, it gives us, as members of the planning board, a little more flexibility with those applications that are coming before us. If my understanding is correct, and we switch it to the underlying zoning, we lose the right to deal with any of those dimensional waivers. It would now be mandatory, but it would also now, any waiver would require a full variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So it takes the variance issue and the dimensional waivers and those types of things out of our control and into the Zoning Board of Appeals. And I don't know that I have a preference one way or another yet myself in my own head. I just think it's important that we understand the difference between the two.
No, I think you're right, Mary, that we do need to understand that difference. I mean, my sort of reading of outside counsel's opinion on that was that we would not be able to change the dimensional requirements under site planning review, but only under special permit requests. So that, that was sort of a detail that I think we would have to understand and think through. And I know Joe suggested that we even, potentially have outside counsel attend a meeting to, help us think through that and maybe make some suggestions as to how to correct the proposed ordinance that we had been discussing earlier. I think what that all does, which I think is valid, because if we're going to do anything, we do need to do it correctly, and we need to do it in a way that we're all in agreement, is that that may delay the time schedule with regard to getting to this May's town meeting, but I don't think that's detrimental. I don't think there's any pressing issue that is requiring it to get to this May's town meeting, such as there is with the recreational marijuana amendments that we were discussing earlier. Now, is there any other member of the board that has any thoughts on this?
So this is Dave. I have a
Yes, go ahead, David. Well, that's what,
I don't know, could it become,
it'd become mandatory, and that's
Yes.
that's what would happen if this proposed change would occur, that the village overlay district requirements would become the underlying zoning.
No, I understand that, but I'm concerned, really asking whether or not the possibility that Mary was outlining could be retained under a village commercial overlay district zoning bylaw that was obligatory rather than voluntary.
Well, I mean, that's part of what the outside counsel's opinion was about. And the way Mary stated it was correct, that the outside counsel indicated that our ability to vary the dimensional requirements would be limited to special permit situations, and we would,
Okay, all
we
right.
would no longer be able to do it under site plan review, which was in the original draft. So that was the comment by outside counsel in their review of the draft that we had discussed back in December.
Okay,
Okay?
that's the January 2nd memo from last meeting?
From Adam Costner, yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So let me just ask a question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot since we have a representative from the Chamber of Commerce here tonight. Has the Chamber of Commerce taken a look at this issue? Then my second question is, would the Chamber of Commerce like to be involved in having a discussion with the Planning Board at some future date with regard to this, since probably a large percentage of your members are going to be affected by this change? Yeah, if you could go and if you could introduce yourself for the record, please.
Cindy Williams, Executive Director of the Chamber. Certainly a conversation should be had because it will affect the businesses and such that we represent down in Harwich Port.
Okay, thank you very much, Cindy. Then what I would recommend, if the board is in agreement, is that we continue to consider this issue. We consider at some point in the relatively near future, when the timing is right, both a meeting with Adam Coster, who could, help us through his comments and maybe how to respond to them, and a meeting with the Chamber of Commerce, which, I would also propose to be an open meeting that we would, sort of publicly advertise, and we could work with the Chamber of Commerce as to with regard to the timing and the location of that meeting.
Can you tell us what you say the two options are?
What two options?
In other words, whether or not is that what we're going to decide, whether or not we're going to recommend a zoning amendment for a Port Village district to the town meeting?
not for this town meeting, I hope.
Well, I mean, that was what we were thinking, but we're now at a time period where that's probably not feasible. Now, Joe, I mean, if you remember back from the Cumberland Farms issue,
Do I ever?
We had gone under the assumption that the requirements of the village overlay district were mandatory. When we got into litigation, it was discovered through the discovery process that when it went to town meeting for approval, it was presented to town meeting as being voluntary. Therefore, an applicant could choose to either go with the underlying zoning or with the village overlay district approach. What we had talked about was, in some form, changing that so that the requirements of the village overlay district would become the underlying zoning and therefore, per se be mandatory.
And where does the Port Village district come in?
That is the Port Village District.
It would get renamed.
It would get renamed as the
I
Port
see. So
that Port
Village
Village
District.
would be the
Oh, okay, I'm
underlying zone.
sorry, I didn't understand your question, Joe. So it would get renamed in the proposed zoning amendment to the Port Village District. Okay, and then Ally, before she left, very wisely sent our draft to outside counsel, Adam Costner, who came back with with some comments and some concerns with regard to the draft, which, before we go any further, we do need to address.
Now that I understand it, I'll go back and read it again.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Well, we're not
It
going
is
to,
confusing.
we're not going to take any action tonight, and we'll have
I hear
further
you.
discussion on this. But if it's the consensus of the board, I think we should at least continue to pursue this matter with a potential future meeting at some future date. And it doesn't have to be immediately, but some date that sort of fits into everybody's schedule with both Adam and the Harwich Chamber of Commerce.
I do think we should have him in. I know that costs us,
Agreed.
but I do think this is one of the few occasions when I'd rather have him sitting there than corresponding with us.
I agree with you, Joe. I think it would be very helpful.
And I think if a meeting is held with the folks down in Harwichport, it might be nice for this board to actually go there.
I would be perfectly happy to go there. I mean, I'm not the chairman, and I'm only acting chairman, so I'm not sure I can speak for Larry, but I'm sure we'd all be happy to go to
Well,
Harwichport.
they have a conference room,
Do you have a conference room, Cindy?
very nice one.
We do have a conference room at the chamber. Depending on how large it is, the meeting, you may want to open it up to the Harwichport businesses there. So, we'll figure that all out as we get
Okay.
going with it. But certainly,
Okay, and if
definitely,
not,
it's better
do
to come
you-
down there because this does pertain to down there.
Yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement with that. Cindy, if we think that it's going to be too large a crowd for your conference room, are there other places you know of in the Harwichport area that might be available? for
Yeah, I
that
mean,
type-
even if we, depending on the time and stuff, we can figure out one of the restaurants maybe. If they're not, we'll figure it out. There'll
Okay,
be a
okay,
location in
We can work
Harwichport.
with the Chamber of Commerce to figure
Both
that
of the
out.
banks, too.
We could do that as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
Cape Cod-
depending, I mean, they have all kinds of regulations and stuff too, so we got to just be careful of that kind of stuff.
Friday at the church?
I just did, thank you, Charlene. We did just do a meeting at the church that I did with the members and both Senator Seer and Representative Peak. So Pilgrim Congregational is always willing to do something like that. So that'll probably be where we end up depending on
How
the
many
number of people.
Size-wise.
How many people?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, well, that's something we can work out, and I think, maybe Charlene, if you could give some thoughts to, when the best times to schedule that would
Yeah,
be.
probably like late May, early June,
Yeah.
before the season
Perfect.
really ramps
I think that's a
up.
great idea.
Yeah, because I think in the short run, especially with some of the items that I'm aware of that's going to be on the warrant, I think there's going to be a lot of focus on issues for town meeting, and I don't think we want to detract
Definitely.
from
I think the
that.
ones that we have ahead of us that we really need the public to concentrate on and to really understand, those are more in the forefront, I think.
Yes, I agree with you, Cindy. Thank you very much. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to briefings and reports by board members. Does anybody have any briefings and reports? Well, I'll start it off. The Community Preservation Committee has gone through a preliminary discussion on their opinions of the 16 applications that have been submitted for funding. As I had reported before, the total dollar amount of those applications is a larger dollar amount than the funds that are currently available. The committee is meeting tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, and I think it's in this room. And I think the intent is going to be to proceed through the discussion and hopefully vote on all 16 applications and make determinations as to what is going to be recommended to town meeting for funding.
Mr.
So,
Chairman,
yes.
but you're fairly close, aren't you, in terms of the total amount of money and total requests?
It depends on how you look at it.
Okay.
I think if we were to approve all of the articles or applications that were sent to us, there's not enough
Well,
funds
my question is,
available.
how short are you?
I don't know the exact dollar amount.
There's not enough to fund all of them 100%, but
Right.
there is funding available to fund portions of
All
all
of them.
Oh, yeah, right.
requests.
That's what I was
Yeah.
trying to get to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we'll have to do that sort of balancing tomorrow night. Of course, as usual, all of you will be invited to attend if you would
I
like to.
cannot attend tomorrow.
Okay. Any other briefings or reports? Okay, hearing none, I would like to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, second, I'd like to call for a vote. Mary?
Aye.
Al?
Aye.
I vote aye. Joe? Jim?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Okay,
Back to the beach, David.
meeting adjourned.